there is something terrible happening in Washington, D.C., in the United States Congress, that every American should know about and every American should care about, because the actions of radical and extreme members will make our children's world profoundly more dangerous. It will increase the chances dramatically that America's young men and women will die in a European country fighting Russians in the 21st century. Should that ever happen, it can be remembered as the most unnecessary war that has ever been. Right now in Washington, extremist politicians working in concert with extremists from foreign governments are seeking to throttle and choke off military funding to the Ukrainian people, to the Ukrainian nation, so that they may survive Russian aggression. Let's be clear about something. There is a deadly war underway that was started by the Russian Federation on the direct orders of Vladimir Putin. This is a criminal war, an illegal war, and there are thousands and thousands of incidents of documented war crimes, of barbarity, the rape of women and girls, sexual violence, murder, and the kidnapping of tens of thousands of Ukrainian children who have been taken east, their whereabouts completely unknown. Ukraine has been invaded in the 21st century by a far more powerful nation in contravention of every international law that there is. It is a war of naked aggression, and it is intolerable. The United States also has moral and political obligations that should be stated clearly. In 1991, when Ukraine became fully independent from the tyrannical and totalitarian Soviet Union, guarantees were made to Ukraine so that she would give up her nuclear armaments. In return, the United States guaranteed a commitment to Ukraine's sustained sovereignty. In the real world, the fickleness of the American attention span can be a deadly thing. Not long ago, President Zelensky was cheered as a global hero in the United States Congress, a symbol of resistance of a brave people fighting a superior foe. All they asked for were the armaments to do so. And the free world responded. But now the free world is growing tired. Fascistic Senator J.D. Vance from the state of Ohio said this: "We've already given the Ukrainians $100 billion. If they're going to get another $60 billion, what result will be different than what happened with the first $100 billion? Well, I can answer the question for him and rebut the absurd premise of the argument. The $160 billion has kept NATO, has kept the West out of a Russian war of aggression by making sure that war is fought inside of Ukraine. There is a simple truth, and this is not rocket science. And any official who cannot understand this should be questioned if they suffer from an ailment that blocks the digestion of history, that impedes the absorption of fact, that diminishes the ability to summon common sense. The Russian war cannot expand outside of Ukraine so long as Russia is losing the war in Ukraine. But the second the Russians win in Ukraine, the war will expand outside of Ukraine. And the places where it will expand to next include NATO territory. Now, Donald Trump's campaign has promised that among the first things that he does, besides seeking retribution and declaring himself a dictator on day one, is to withdraw America from the most successful military alliance in world history. That alliance has kept the peace in Europe after the deadliest war in all of human history, that saw the greatest acts of barbarism and man's inhumanity to man in all of history. A withdrawal from Europe will guarantee European war and the destruction, once again, of some of the greatest cities of the world under missiles and drones and artillery and guns because of the aggression of one man, of Vladimir Putin, who can still be stopped. The Heritage Foundation was once a great conservative think tank. Today, it has become an arm of the conspiracy to destroy the government of the United States and a Trump second term. The Heritage Foundation is deeply involved in the project to fundamentally disassemble America's democracy. And now, alongside with agents of Viktor Orban's Hungary, an authoritarianist state in Central Europe, though a NATO ally and an EU member, sided with Nazi Germany in the Second World War and with the German Empire in the First, and is increasingly hostile and antithetical to Western values, including pluralism and democracy. Just a year ago, Viktor Orban gave a speech where he summoned the words of Hitler himself. Viktor Orban is no friend of the West and no friend of democracy, but he does have a Putin fetish like his friend Donald Trump. Viktor Orban and his agents from Hungary, along with the Heritage Foundation, will be briefing United States senators of the Republican Party, urging them to cut off military funding for Ukraine. There is a conspiracy of extremism that is as historically illiterate and blind as their antecedents, as their predecessors, the America First movement of Charles Lindbergh that preceded the Second World War. Lindbergh tried to end America's draft, which would have devastated America's preparations to fight the Nazi menace. They tried to cut off funding for the United Kingdom. These people have always been wrong. They have stood on the side of segregation domestically, and they have stood on the side of appeasement abroad. These dangerous hours deserve rebuttal and response. The United States government must fund and arm the Ukrainian military for as long as Ukraine is fighting Russia. And that war may last 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, or 10. And the American commitment must be this: whatever it takes to defeat and break the Russian army in Ukraine so that it cannot cause aggression in Europe, that it cannot lure Americans to war, that it does not cause the Third World War or a massive casualty war on European soil involving another generation of Americans. All over Europe are the cemeteries where America's war dead are buried. Armies of liberation, Let us honor them by making sure that there is never another young American that joins them under a white cross or a Star of David in a row, an army at rest, facing back home across the ocean they did not return from, like their grandfathers and great-great-grandfathers.